like to walk around when I talk. So my name's Abraham Hamadeh. She got my name right, which doesn't always happen, so if you get mistaken, you can call me Honest Abe for short. So a little bit about myself. I was born in Chicago, unfortunately. So my parents actually immigrated here from Syria 30 some odd years ago. And like every immigrant, they go to the big cities, right? So they wound up in Chicago. My dad had no education, no money. But how we ended up in Arizona is kind of funny. So my dad randomly won the lottery. It wasn't like, life-changing, but he won 50,000 bucks. And it included a stay at the Scottsdale Princess Resort in the middle of January, in like the mid-90s. So they got off the plane, and when they got off the plane at Sky Harbor, they looked at each other and they said, "Wow, we found the Middle East of America." So it was the easiest decision they made to move out here, actually. So I grew up in Cave Creek, North Scottsdale area, if you're familiar with that. I have a sister up there. She actually married an NBA champion who played on the San Antonio Spurs. And my brother's a successful real estate investor over there. A little bit about myself, though. I'm a former prosecutor at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. My jurisdiction was downtown Phoenix. And if you know downtown Phoenix, it's a hellhole. A lot of crime, and it's getting a lot worse, actually. Mental illness, that was actually very interesting when I have to deal with the mental ill. So many of them are deemed incompetent to stand trial, right? So what happens is that they get sent to the state hospital system, and I actually have to sign documents, right, saying that we have to forcibly inject them, which is usually a big deal for the government to say that we're going to forcibly inject somebody, unless you're taking the COVID vaccine, apparently. So what happens is then they get released back into community, and then it's a cycle. They keep repeating the same crimes over and over, or actually escalate the crimes. But I've done about 24 jury trials. But besides being just a prosecutor, I'm an Army captain and intelligence officer. And I just returned from a deployment to Saudi Arabia. So I was out there for 14 months. Now let me tell you, Saudi Arabia is a complicated country, if you know this. 15 out of the 19 hijackers were Saudis. However, it was also President Donald Trump's first foreign country he visited as president. He understood the relation between Saudi Arabia is very important, especially now more than ever with the oil crisis. That's why they actually picked up his phone calls, right? Like what's happening with Joe Biden. So what I was in charge of in Saudi Arabia was actually training the Saudis' domestic security forces. So those are the forces that guarded their oil facilities, as well as their special security forces. But besides just training them in country, we would also send them to the United States for training. So I want to take you back to December 2019. Some of you may or may not remember Pensacola. There was a terrorist attack. Do you remember that? It was a Saudi Arabian pilot terrorist killed 3 of our service members. Kind of got swept under the rug, and I'll explain a little bit about that, why that happened. But, so I was in charge of actually implementing new enhanced security vetting guidelines to prevent that situation from ever happening again, which included biometrics and getting their travel history and looking at their family history. But it was complicated. When I talk about Saudi Arabia being complicated, it's the #1 purchaser of all U.S. military sales and equipment in the world. It's a $130 billion contract that we have. And actually, every year we have 5,000 foreign military training in the United States. 1,000 of them are Saudis. So it was complicated. When I tell you that when I'm negotiating with the Saudi generals and Saudi colonels and heads of ministry, it's not like Afghanistan or Iraq, where we're dictating terms to them, right? This is a very complicated, complex negotiation. That's why I tell folks, I'm not scared of the media or the pink-haired wackos, right? I've already been tried and tested over there. But when I got back here in September, just a few months ago, I don't say this to be hyperbolic or dramatic. I no longer recognize our country. And I think many of us feel that way. I mean, if you look at, just about 2 years ago, right, March 2020, we had the government shutting down churches, schools, small businesses, loved ones dying in hospitals, and we're giving births alone. And quite frankly, I think our founding fathers would be ashamed of us for what we put up with in the past 2 years. And when you're looking at it, why we feel like we're being ambushed every single day, and it's happening, right? I mean, if you just look at February, it was the Canadian truckers, and if you donated money to them, you're going to potentially be doxxed. Now it's Disney World suddenly, right? You can't even trust Disney. But if you're looking at why we're in this position as a country, it's not just because the radical left. It's because the weak need Republicans to allow them to take control. So when you're looking at, I was here in June of 2020, back when I was at Scottsdale Fashion Square, the BLM George Floyd riots, remember that? What did our elected officials do? They changed their profile photo to a black square, and they threw our law enforcement under the bus. Everybody thanks me for my military service, which is a great thing, but we need to be thanking our law enforcement officers for going to the streets of war every single day. and they don't have the backing of the city council or the mayor. So when you're looking at, how we're at war right now, and Republicans just have been asleep, and the radical left has overtaken every single institution. It's not just universities anymore. Now they're going after children at elementary school. And if you speak out against the school board, you're going to be labeled a domestic terrorist. Now think about the logic right now that our government thinks of us. So this is what's going on. It's much scarier than I ever thought. I got involved in politics actually way back in 2007. I see the end of the Fed. Sure. I got involved in 2007 on the Ron Paul campaign. And back then, we were fighting the establishment, the media, and our own Republican Party. And it's quite funny because I think Donald Trump implemented so many Ron Paul's policies. And thank God we have Ron Paul's son there to actually stop Dr. Fauci. But back then, the fights that we were having were so much more philosophical. Now it's much more personal, right? And this is why we feel like we're being attacked. We're being silenced on social media. You're going to be doxxed. Your bank accounts might be, stopped. So this is what we're talking about when I say this November matters more than any other election. I know every candidate likes to say that, but you know it and I know it in our gut, that what happens this November will set our country's future for the next century. And this is why we got to fight like hell and never quit. And why I decided to run for Attorney General. If there's one silver lining to COVID, it's we finally realized that states have power. And I was looking at our leadership here to do something, and they did nothing. And unfortunately, we look at Ron DeSantis or Kristi Noem. And don't tell me we have to moderate our positions, to appease the independents. Look what Ron DeSantis did. He turned Florida, a purple state, into bright red by sticking through his convictions. And that's exactly what we need to do here in Arizona. So, if you see what happened, you remember Ducey at the border back in December. Our border is lawless, and this is very intentional orchestrated. Even before Joe Biden took office, you saw the illegal immigrants wear those Joe Biden shirts coming across, right? But what's going on? You saw Doug Ducey at the border in December. He was standing like a dead fish. There was a National Guard soldier, there were 3 sheriffs, deputies, and in walked in a dozen illegal immigrants. What kind of image does that portray to the rest of the world? It shows that the United States was wide open. And quite frankly, if I was Doug Ducey, I would order the National Guard and the sheriff deputies to arrest them and send them back. But then he's going to say this is a federal issue. No. The federal issue is going to be if it's immigration law. But we have absolute authority to protect our border sovereignty. And I'm just waiting for some backbone for that to happen. So as Attorney General, what I intend to do for our border is actually open up border offices with the AG's office and plant some of our attorneys down there with our county attorneys and start going after the human smuggling aspect and the drug cartels. And we need to label the cartels as a terrorist organization. Yes. Currently, under state law, the cartels are terrorists are labeled a terrorist organization if they follow the U.S. State Department list. Let me tell you, the State Department list is politicized. The Afghan Taliban was not listed as a terrorist organization until January 2021. The Houthi rebels from Yemen, who were shooting missiles at us in Saudi Arabia, were delisted by Joe Biden. So this is where Arizona state legislature needs to take action and actually list the terrorists, the cartels as terrorists they are. But besides that, I have a funny story for you about election integrity. I was overseas when I voted in the 2020 election. How I voted over there was actually I had to print out my ballot from a computer, fill it out, take a photo of it, and then email it to the county recorder's office. And supposedly, when I was talking to folks, they said that what happens then is that there's a Republican and Democrat who then transfer that to a legitimate ballot, right? Does anybody here trust Adrian Fontes to have done that? No. And then when I got back here in September 2021, I had 3 mail-in ballots at my house. I mean, one of them I actually voted in, but these are not under my name. And I'm a good prosecutor. I bring evidence with me. So for them to constantly and consistently gaslight us and tell us that 2020 was the safest, most secure election in history, it's a lie. And it's okay to call it out a lie. But let me tell you right now, what we need to do is beef up the election integrity units officer. I know we're short on time. But ultimately, what I want to get to the point is, every candidate up here is going to talk about border security, election integrity, lawlessness. This is where you have to go with your gut. And I tell folks, the radical left are ultimately not scary people. They don't even know what gender they are. So just have a backbone, stand up to them. I've been endorsed by, I'm proud to be endorsed by Trump's Director of National Intelligence, Rick Grinnell. We just got endorsed by Kash Patel, Trump's National Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien, and we got Chris Miller, Trump's Secretary of Defense. But my best endorsement today, and I think Wendy's on the same list, was by George Soros' ADL group, who listed us as one of the most dangerous candidates running for office. appreciate your time. Thank you. I'm going to stick around for some questions at the end, but thank you. Let's fight like hell, never quit, and go on offense this November. Thank you very much, everybody.